Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for my continued followers, I want to thank you. And if you've been following me, I had a couple of previous videos talking about the state of Alabama. And if you all noticed in the last few weeks, they recently put a man to death using a first-time nitrogen gas to execute him. That was their second attempt. The first time they failed, and the first time they failed, and then the second time, which was a few weeks ago, they did an experimental pure nitrogen gas mask to execute that gentleman, and this time I guess it was successful. Second case I told you all about was the one where a few of the Alabama prisoners who have died while incarcerated, when their bodies left the coroner's, the state of Alabama coroner's office and was delivered back to the family for the funeral, a couple of them had their organs missing, and the family was notified and the families wanted to know where their loved ones' organs were. So these prisoners had died in prison, and then the autopsy was done, and some of them had their hearts, their lungs. One guy had a heart missing, and another guy had all of his major organs missing. So there's some mysterious stuff that's going on in Alabama. And now we got a third one. Alabama has been having deceased or dead prisoners come up for parole, and then they're denying their parole. So they've had people that have died while incarcerated. They didn't do their checks and balances, and then these deceased gentlemen, their names have come up for parole, and then they've been denied parole, but they're already dead. And I want to give you a specific example. So Alabama, and this one guy in specific, Alabama said he was too dangerous to parole, but he's been dead for 10 days. Last year, Alabama's top prosecutor said the parole system is working and dangerous offenders are largely the only ones left behind bars. Was he right? Thousands of people in Alabama lockups are eligible for parole, and each year fewer and fewer are freed. In this series, Denied, Alabama's broken parole system, here we highlight several cases, and you can decide if Attorney General Steve Marshall, Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall, was right when he said there is simply nobody else to reform. That these guys that are in prison are not reformable, and they need to stay in prison and be denied their parole. So one case in particular, on a spring day last year, the Alabama Parole Board split over the fate of Frederick Bishop. They voted 2-1 to send him back to prison, but the board members missed a key detail in the case. Mr. Bishop was already dead. Bishop, who was 55 and from Lineville, Alabama, was serving 20 years in prison for a 2008 robbery conviction. He came up for parole in March of 2023, and 2 out of the 3 board members at the time denied his release. Bishop had died 10 days earlier. With the computer systems and the advancements we have today, and the overabundance of people that are in prison, if one dies, you would think there would be a check and balances to remove that person almost immediately, that same day, from their system. But I guess they don't in Alabama. He was incarcerated at Easterling Correctional Facility in Barbour County, and that's where he was found unresponsive. He wasn't actually set to appear in front of the board anyway. Prisoners in Alabama don't get to attend parole hearings where the board decides their fate in just a few minutes. In fact, Bishop's not the only prisoner to be ordered back to prison despite already being dead. This is how it works. Hearings are brief. Many prisoners lack representation, so no lawyer or family members even show up to the hearing in downtown Montgomery. Those who do show up get just 2 minutes to speak. An inmate is reduced to a piece of paper, a list of check marks to grade their disciplinary record, severity of past offenses, time served, and other factors. In 2023, the parole board looked at those forms and rejected nearly all of them, blocking the release of 92% of the prisoners that, despite the board's own criteria showing about 80% who came up for parole were recommended to be released. So 80% were recommended to be released, but 92% of them that go before the parole board get denied. And that's despite a prison system that is at 168% capacity. A system so dangerously overcrowded is being sued by the Department of Justice for unconstitutional conditions. State Alabama is almost 200% over capacity, 2 times the capacity, and is unsafe conditions. And then when an inmate dies, they don't even know that the inmate has passed for 10 days, and then they bring his name before the parole board, let the family know, and he's already passed and deceased, and they still deny him. Mr. Frederick Bishop died on February 27th, 2023. His parole hearing was on March the 9th. The day that Mr. Bishop came up for parole on March 9th, the board heard 22 cases. They granted just 1 release out of 22. In Alabama prisons, hundreds of people die each year. According to the latest available report from the prison system, which had numbers through September 2023, 337 death investigations have been opened during the fiscal year of last year. 337. Another gentleman who I mentioned in the previous video about his organs being removed when his body was sent back to his family for burial, Brandon Clay Dotson met a similar fate as Frederick Bishop. Dotson was 43 and was found dead at Ventress Correctional Facility on November 16th, the same day that he was up for parole. And guess what? He too was denied. What in the world is going on in the state of Alabama? And for those who follow me, I talk all the time about how you need to pay more attention to your city laws and legislators, your state laws and legislators, way before who's going to be the president and vice president. If there are, especially in the South, if there are old, draconian, narrow-minded laws on the books that could take a minor criminal infraction and turn it into a major prison system, you need to be fully aware of that. Most people are going to run into state law issues when it comes to involvement with the police or the judicial system. Everybody is so worried about who's going to be the president and vice president, Republican or Democrat, and many people don't even know who their city aldermen are, their city councilmen, their state rep, their congressperson, their U.S. senator, how the state Supreme Court is ruling, what is the governor's ideology on how he or she is legislating your freedoms and your rights. And Alabama is a clear example. This is my 3rd video on Alabama. First one I told you the first time ever they used pure nitrogen gas to execute a guy. For the second time. And then they had scenarios where a couple of prisoners have died and have gone to the morgue and the coroner, and when their bodies got released back to the family members, they had their organs missing. And now you have deceased prisoners going before the parole board and getting denied that have been deceased for 2 and 3 weeks at a time. What are they doing in Alabama? I mean, they're acting like they're treating these people so inhumane, and Alabama is treating their prison system like it's in the 1700s, and they're at 168% over capacity, and they're being sued by the Department of Justice for unconstitutional conditions. And as I state, now you had someone like Mr. Frederick Bishop, who had been dead for 2 weeks, and then his name goes before the parole board. He served 20 years, and then they denied his parole, and he's been deceased. Man, I don't know if I would ever want to live in the state of Alabama. I'm here in Missouri, and they might have some very similar laws on the books too. But the inhumane conditions and the treatment of these prisoners is not a very good scenario. They're still human beings. People can make mistakes and have made mistakes, and they should properly serve their time. But some of this stuff that has taken place in Alabama seems like egregious missteps, no checks and balances. How is their computer system working in 2024 to where when somebody passes that morning, by the next day, it should be all appropriations to have that person checked off as deceased and removed from their books. And even more drastic is that they're already over capacity. So if someone dies through natural causes, you would think that would help the prison system on the removal of that inmate since he died. They're already over capacity. So you would think they would pay very close attention to the prisoners that get released, they get paroled, and they can check those people off so we can get the capacity down to under 100%. But evidently they're not doing any of that. What is the board doing? So there needs to be some oversight over the Alabama Prison Board. There needs to be some questions and answers from the governor. The governor is Kay Ivey, who's Republican, has been there since 2017. And I don't care if she's Republican or Democrat, but the governor is the person that governs the whole state, including the penal system. And they're being sued by the Department of Justice for unconstitutional conditions. There needs to be some oversight, and there needs to be tons of questions, and we need tons of answers so that these people in the United States of America, a first world country, to make sure that we're treating the prisoners and inmates with humane conditions and treating them with some humanity, and hopefully we can get some of them to get some rehabilitation and be able to parole, get out, and be productive citizens in society. But if you're treating these prisoners like animals inside the prison, they're going to be even worse when they get out. And this recycle and recidivism of prisoners going in and out of prison throughout their entire life does not make society a healthy place. We need an uptick in the moral and ethical code in America, and not the delineation of our human value and human spirit and respect for each other. It should start with the governor, the prosecuting attorneys, the judges, and we, as the educated free people, should be the clear example of understanding the law, treating people humanely, and giving them an opportunity to serve their time under humane conditions and to be released after they serve their time, and to hopefully they become full, prosperous individuals out in society. But what's going on in Alabama in their prison system is just unbelievable. They are having dead prisoners going for parole and then being denied parole. They have a 92% denial rate for parole hearings. Unbelievable. So, tell me what you think. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth in a positive, God-fearing, and righteous way. Let's provide hope to each and every one of us throughout this country and world. And also that acronym means help one person every day. This has been a Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth, and remember the Tin Man.